Hello and welcome to Disney Movie Investigations. This is case file number 2805, Aliens of the Deep. And for those of you that this is their first time watching these videos, what these are is a deep dive into a Disney movie where we look at its past, how it got made, as well as its future in the world of Disney. So like I said, this is case file number 2805, Aliens of the Deep. And this is a documentary which was directed by James Cameron, and it is a co-production between Walt Disney Pictures and Walden Media. So this movie was released on January 28th of 2005, and it was an IMAX 3D presentation. And there was no real budget that I could find, but the box office ended up doing about $9 million. So like I said, this is a documentary feature which follows James Cameron as he joins the Russian research vessel, and I know I'm going to butcher this, so I'm going to try my best, Academic Mislav Kadish. Hopefully I got that right, or at least close to it. But the Russian research vessel teams up with a group of NASA scientists and American marine biologists to investigate the 10 hydrothermal vents in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So there's no real production history. It is a straightforward documentary. James Cameron is known for doing these. This is a direct follow-up to Ghosts of the Abyss that he had released previously. And Ghosts of the Abyss was a documentary about the remains of the Titanic. And this was more about the ecosystems down in the depths of the ocean. So these vents, to kind of further explain what the documentary is these hydrothermal vents have unique ecosystems which support diverse organisms such as giant tube worms, blind white crabs, and various forms of shrimp. And these organisms actually get their energy from the thermal vents that are shooting up from the depths of the earth, because there's actually no sun that reaches this far down deep into the ocean. So they survive in these superheated sulfurous waters. And the documentary really goes into the theories as well of life beyond Earth, because it takes the information that they learned about these thermal vents and applies to how life could possibly survive on Mars, as well as Jupiter as well, they kind of go into. This film mostly shows James Cameron's passion about the exploration of the oceans, as well as his interest in extraterrestrial life. And it showcases his drive for future technology as well. And you see that in a lot of the subs, as well as a lot of the kind of the scientific work that they do once they get specimens of the deep. So this, like I said, this film was filmed in IMAX 3D format, and it was similar to Cameron's Ghosts of the Abyss, movie that he did, documentary. And it was released on DVD in November of 2005. So that's pretty much it in terms of, like, without going beat for beat. But in terms of, like, thoughts, it has great visuals, great exploration of the technology and the ecosystem. And it's just a great overall documentary, especially if you're into the oceanography as well as different technology. It's a bit of a long one. It's 1 hour and 40 minutes, but it doesn't seem like that. It tends to flow quite easily. And they do switch from great ocean photography to some of the theory work. So it's not all one thing, which is a nice kind of breakup between the two. So yeah, like that's pretty much it in terms of Aliens of the Deep. So I thought I would do another bonus story. And this one I thought, given that the movie takes place in the ocean, I thought we'd look at the Living Seas Pavilion in Epcot and kind of show how it evolved over time. So yeah. So the Living Seas Pavilion opened in 1986, and it was sponsored by United Technologies. It wasn't an opening day attraction because they were still building the aquarium when Epcot opened in 1982. It had opened up 4 years after opening day. And the original concept for the Living Seas Pavilion is that they wanted it to be a dramatic sea base with a fantasy appeal. So the plan was, and this is all purely concept, is that originally guests would have entered a large pre-show theater hosted by the Poseidon, which is the ocean Greek god. And Poseidon would tame a powerful storm and would urge guests to explore the undersea world. And then this pavilion the original concept was to have a coral reef ride, which would take up half of the pavilion itself. And guests would be boarded onto clear glass bubbles and begin their trip into the cradle of life, deep into the sea base. The plan was for this ride to have full sets and animatronics, and then fish and sharks would have attacked the ride vehicles to add a bit of suspense. And then shipwrecks and visual effects would also enhance the ride to kind of give it a little bit more dramatics. And then finally, at the end of the ride, it would enter a clear tube into a 200 feet diameter tank, and that was going to be the aquarium. And then the tank of the visitor center, which is the how the pavilion would be laid out, would be on 2 different levels. A restaurant would be on the upper level, and this is what Coral Reef is. And that would serve seafood, as well as you could have great views of the tank as well. So a backstage tour was also planned to allow guests to see the support systems underneath the sea base. And the exit would be an underwater dome on the observation level, where guests would be exited back into the park. So that was the concept, and this is what happened. So guests entered not through a tube or anything. They just entered the pavilion, and they would see a pre-show movie that was sponsored by Urban Technologies. Poseidon was not ever in the pavilion at all. That kind of fell by the wayside. And then you entered the seas, and it. The movie. Sorry, to go back to the movie, it was entitled "The Seas," and it showed how the Earth went from the volcanic planet to a world of oceans. So it kind of showed the creation of the oceans. And then after the pre-show movie, the guests would take a hydrolator, which would take guests to the Sea Base Alpha. And this was if you've never been on this is very similar to what the stretching room is in the Haunted Mansion. The hydrolator wouldn't actually go anywhere, kind of breaking secrets here, but it would have walls that would have kind of projections on it, and it would stretch to kind of show that you were moving. And then they added some dramatics by having the ground shake a little bit, but you weren't actually moving anywhere. Then guests would enter the sea base, and they would explore in sea cabs. And this was where the bubble idea came from, but they weren't clear bubbles. They were kind of like white vehicles that guests would enter. And they would get various views of the coral reef in the aquarium. And then the other thing is that in order to kind of spruce up the dramatics, is they actually had a lot of props from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to kind of add to the ambience of the pavilion. And then as well as they did have the Coral Reef restaurant, and that was a sit-down restaurant that served guests different seafood dishes, as well as you got a great view of the aquarium as well. So this lasted until about 1998 when United Technologies pulled out of their sponsorship. Disney did try to find another sponsorship, but unfortunately no one was really interested in sponsoring this. So for a while, the attendance dropped dramatically. The kind of the slang was it wasn't the living seas anymore; it was the dead seas, because like no one would be in there, and the line had no weight at all. But then in 2001, the sea cabs was also taken out, so there was no ride in the pavilion anymore, and that was due to low attendance. And then guests could also bypass the pre-show movie because it had a lot of references to United Technologies, so there was no pre-show film anymore, and they would go straight to the hydrolator. This lasted for a couple years until Finding Nemo was released in theaters. And then when Finding Nemo came out, they kind of repurposed the decorations and the ambience of the Living Seas Pavilion. They added 2 new exhibits as well, which is Bruce's Playground, as well as they added Turtle Talk with Crush, which is an interactive show for guests where they can talk to Crush and ask questions. And then a Nemo structure was added outside the pavilion as well with the Nemo characters. And then the hydrolators ended up shutting down in 2006. And this was because they were creating a Nemo ride as part of the Pavilion. And then finally in 2006, the Pavilion was renamed The Seas with Nemo and Friends. And the Nemo ride, guests would enter the extended queue, which featured images, sea-like images, kind of showing that you were going to the the Australian current. And then you would enter clammobiles and go on the search for Nemo. So this had a lot, instead of as many glances into the aquarium, this had a lot of screens where you would see Nemo characters projected onto the glass windows. The end scene, though, would allow guests to still see the aquarium. And that was kind of the big reveal, as you got to see the real-life aquarium as well as glass projections of, I think it's like Nemo, Dory, and Marlin. You see them in the actual aquarium. And now guests are allowed to do underwater tours in the aquarium because they do scuba diving experiences with dolphins, turtles, and sharks, I believe, as well as I think they do backstage tours as well. So yeah, that's the kind of the heart of it. And then I just was going to show you a Disney artifact. So unfortunately I don't have any aliens of the deep per se, but I was going to show you, I guess, some creatures from beneath the sea. I got these at D23 Expo in 2009, and they are little tum-tums of Ariel and Ursula. And while they're not aliens of the deep, they are definitely characters from the deep. And I just showed you the bottoms too. They were exclusive for the D23 Expo in 2019. So yeah, that's a Disney artifact for this. So this video is not obviously as long as the other ones, but I thought I thought you guys would find it interesting about the Living Seas Pavilion in Epcot. And stay tuned for our next case file, which will be next week, which will be case file number 2561, which will be our last 101 Dalmatians case file. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.